go to you, Sheryl, as our storm watch continues in eastern Canada.
It's a different scenario depending on what side of the country you're on. So where it's going to warm up in the west, it's going to cool down in the east, to the point that in Toronto, for example, on Friday we'll be at 15 and we'll stay there through the weekend. For the time being, we've got some heat. We've got summer continuing at least today. Today's a transition day, though. Heavy rainfall in northern Ontario. Warnings are posted. Wawa, Sault Ste. Marie, the Algoma district, and toward Timmins, the city with a heart of gold, we'll be seeing some rainfall, 50 millimeters quite likely. We have some storm potential in the southwest. The rain has moved into the Windsor area. We're getting our teams on the ground in Chatham, in London, and in Cambridge for live updates, which will be with you within the next hour. We do have thunderstorm potential today, severe weather threat down into St. Louis today, and then southern Ontario. The thing I want to mention about this, though, is that it could locally be higher in thunderstorms. And although we have not seen a thunderstorm potential, or not seeing that on the icons for Toronto, would not rule it out necessarily for urban centers. So urban flooding is a concern, because if we get those thunderstorms to happen over populated areas where we have not so much green grass as we have concrete and cement, we could be looking at some urban flooding. So hopefully that doesn't happen today. Humidex readings, high 20s, 30s. This is likely the last warm day of the season and of the year. Online at theweathernetwork.com, we have, in testing mode, a monthly forecast. And when we look at Toronto, for example, we don't see anything above 20. And right through to the end of September, and clearly in October, it's going to be hard going to get that. We do have high pressure in place, but there's rain moving through. And on the backside of all of this in Labrador, it's going to be mixing in rain and snowfall. Just to give you an idea, it's not quite into the Atlantic provinces yet, at least where it's more populated, but some snow further to the north. And then another low comes in with a lot of rainfall for the weekend ahead. So what's happening in the west? Well, in the BC South Interior, sunshine. We end with our weather highlights. It's cooler and drier here across the prairies. We'll have more storm watch coverage for you. Stay with us. Concerns that we have with the amount of rain that may come in thunderstorms across southern Ontario. Northern Ontario getting big time rains, although the thunderstorm threat is not as high in northern Ontario as it is to the south. And look at that. It's really starting to fire up now in the southwest of the province. So we're going to have live updates for you with our teams on the ground in Chatham, London, and Cambridge within the next hour. So we'll see what it's like on the ground down toward Chatham, where that's where we have the most heat and also the highest severe storm threat today. Locally, pretty high rainfall totals in thunderstorms if we get them to develop. But overall, this will be 15 to 30 millimeters of rain, and in thunderstorms it could go higher. Now, if we get one of these training thunderstorms, as we've seen so many times so far this season with regard to urban flooding, if it happens and it's just over that same area, we could possibly be talking about some flooding rain. So we'll just have to keep tabs very closely on the radar, because it's very difficult to predict precisely within a span of a few kilometers where that's precisely going to happen. So that's why the radar is so important today. Humidex readings, high 20s and 30s. We're going to be seeing a drop in temperatures. Okay, it's not going to snow just yet and we have rainfall warnings in place for northern Ontario, but further south, there is rain on the way. It's just not to warning criteria. Special weather statements are posted. You were talking, Chris, about having a warm, hot drink because of the snow. I suspect there's going to be a big run on hot drinks tomorrow morning in Alberta. We don't really need much of an excuse to put hot drinks in our hands in these areas, but certainly by the weekend, as temperatures go down into the teens, yeah, we're probably going to be all clutching our coffees and teas. It's going to feel a lot cooler. With that, the highest potential for stormy weather is in the southwest in terms of severe threat. Isolated severe weather is possible in Midwestern Ontario. We don't have a thunderstorm icon showing for Toronto, but we cannot rule it out, especially in the more northern western suburbs of Toronto. Thunderstorm risk down towards St. Louis today. In terms of the heat, we've got warm temperatures still across the east. And then in the west, it is, look at this, look at the blues showing up. Calgary, for example, overnight will have a wind chill of -10, and it'll feel like -5 in Edmonton. So there's the cold air. But what's interesting about the forecast is we're going to flip things around. It gets far, far cooler in the east, and by contrast, in the west, the temperatures are going to rebound, definitely increasing into the mid-20s. So BC, through all of this snow that we've been talking about in Alberta, for the most part, BC has been spared from it, with the exception of the extreme south and east of BC down into the Kootenays. I'm getting a bit of snow there at higher elevations, but look at the rebound in temperatures here for Thursday, or rather, sorry, the degradation of the temperatures for Thursday across the east. We will see an increase in the west. Thank you so much for being here for our Storm Watch coverage. Live team coverage will continue through the afternoon for the drive home too. I'm Sheryl Plouffe. We've got a lot to get to. We have heavy rain in northern Ontario, and yes, there are some warnings for that. Sault Ste. Marie, Wawa to Timmins seeing most of the highest accumulations in excess of 50, quite likely. Southern Ontario, maybe not to warning criteria, but 15 to 30 millimeters of rain is a sizable amount. And note this, locally higher in thunderstorms. We know what that can do in terms of urban flooding and flash flooding. If we get 100 millimeters of rain to fall in the span of a few hours on an urban center, that could cause problems. Now, we can't say with any amount of certainty where exactly that's going to happen, and that's why the radar is such an important tool on an afternoon like today to follow the storms. We do have storms already, and rain, I should say, down into the south and west of the province, and that's where we're going to have a team in Chatham, another one in London, another one in Cambridge for live updates that will start shortly here on the Weather Network. They're just setting up right now. Severe thunderstorm risk in the U.S., yes, there is the risk of tornadoes, not necessarily a high risk for tornadoes in our province, but nevertheless, we have to be mindful. Any thunderstorm really has that potential for severe weather. Looking at our cloud tops, clearly we've got a fairly significant wide-spanning low over the Great Lakes region. Humidex readings this afternoon, high 20s, low 30s. We've got heat today. Now heading into the rest of the week, not so hot. Thursday afternoon, 18 degrees in Toronto, and we're going to see it even drop further versus going to school in Alberta, where we've had to put on the parkas. And we're going to definitely be looking at, in Ontario, the story with our storm watch is about thunderstorm potential, but it's also about a couple of other things. One being rain in northern Ontario, significant amount from Sault Ste. Marie, Wawa to Timmins, and adjacent portions of Quebec. It's breezy as well. The winds are definitely going to be increasing as the low pressure system comes through. We'll have thunderstorm potential for sure, but this is likely the last warm day of the year, because as we look forward to the end of September, we don't see any more readings that are above even 20 degrees in the city of Toronto, for example, just to use that as a bit of a test. Severe thunderstorm risk is down into the southern portions of southwest of Ontario, but portions of Michigan and down towards St. Louis, Missouri, also looking at some thunderstorms today too. And with that, if that happens, we could see some thunderstorms, possibly some floods, maybe flash flood scenarios, because there's going to be possibly extensive rainfall in these thunderstorms as it comes through. The winds will be also another issue, and we'll have our team coverage throughout the afternoon and for the drive home as well to let us know whether or not we have any problems with regard to the rainfall for the drive home. But this afternoon across eastern Canada through, so it will look nothing like that. We're going to see rainfall coming in by tomorrow. By contrast, in Western Canada for BC, in the south interior and at the coast, fair weather, high pressure. It's been such a dry summer though, right? We'd like to see maybe a little bit more precipitation than we've seen, but that's not the case. We've got high pressure and pleasant weather there. And some portions of the west where we've had...
For your quick